It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, May 24th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking everything about the Flyers with Steph Driver.
I have questions. I'm loaded with questions.
Yeah, very excited to bring you our conversation with the host of Broad Street Hockey Radio.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who is on Twitter at Sportsology. You can subscribe or follow us for free on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you to so many people who've subscribed over on YouTube in the last couple of weeks since we talked about our giveaway. We're getting closer to that 800 subscription mark. So if you haven't yet, head over to YouTube and subscribe there. We'll announce the prize once we get a little closer to that milestone for you. Just a bit of Flyers news before we get to our conversation with Steph Driver. It came out via David Pagnotti that the NHL is thinking about having 2 outdoor games in a row at MetLife Stadium in North Jersey, where they would have back-to-back games, the Flyers versus the Devils and the Isles versus the Rangers. What is your take on that?
I like it. I went to all those games at Yankee Stadium when they had all the New York teams playing. I like the fact that they brought in the Devils and the Flyers. It's a lot of seats though, and so there is a thought. I just spoke to Ted Starkey, and he said that he thinks they would include some sort of concert or music act that plays a little bit more with the Flyers Devils because it's a lot of seats to fill for them. And so, my idea of a band that would work would be like Fish. Uh,
Ah,
and Trey Anastasia is a big Flyers fan, as an example. He was in their locker room in 2010. So maybe that's like the Flyers contingent, and then New Jersey goes with whoever they go with, but that's
I
just
mean, it's
an
got to be
example.
Bon Jovi, right?
I mean, but he may not want to do it. Like at this point,
I
Bon
know.
Jovi
It just
doesn't
feels
tour a
like it
lot.
needs to be a New Jersey kind
It
of
does.
guy.
And it shouldn't be Southside Johnny just because he's too old. And it probably won't be Bon Jovi because he doesn't want to do it, or Springsteen, but there's probably somebody else in
Yeah.
between there that might work out. And so, yeah, I could see them adding some music to it just to
Yep.
juice those extra, 15,000 seats that they might be lacking to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll see if an official announcement comes out, and it would be a good travel destination for the weekend too,
Yes.
for people coming into New York at the same time.
You go to the
All
outlets
right.
in Secaucus.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. Without further ado, here is our conversation with Steph Driver. All right. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome from Broad Street Hockey Radio, Steph Driver. Welcome, Steph.
Thanks so much for having me, Rachel and Russ. It's been a long time coming. I really appreciate the chance to be a guest with you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, wanted the timing to be exactly right. And man, so much intrigue in Flyers land. And this is the perfect time to talk to you. Speaking of all of that intrigue and news as of late, wanted to talk to you about your initial take on the Keith Jones hire, and then now that we've allowed time to let it sink in a little bit, have your feelings changed at all? Because I know I'm a firm believer in allowing yourself to have a gut reaction and then a thought out reaction.
I love that thought process. My gut reaction was when I heard that Keith Jones and Eddie Olczyk were the two front runners. I laughed. Like that was my reaction. I was like, yeah, all right, the Flyers are Flyersing. And then Keith Jones was announced the team president. And again, I laughed. After having thought through it, after having heard what he has to say, I'm definitely willing to give him a chance. I think that he's saying the right things, but he's a media personality, so he's going to say the right things. We know how to spin, right? Like this is this is what we do. What I need to see from him is actual results. So let's see how this draft goes. Let's see how free agency goes. I don't even know if I want to wait until the season starts to start giving him a grade, because we need to hit on free agency. We need to hit on the draft. And if the Flyers don't, I don't know what this next season's going to look like.
All right. So Steph, the first thing is the draft. So when Danny was hired, I asked him about that. Would they bring in anybody else, another consultant, somebody? Would there be any changes? He said no. And so that's a worry for me, because I've gone back and looked at how they've been drafting, and it's mixed. It's not great. It's not in the top of the league. It's not in the bottom of the league, but it's not good enough. And so what gives you, or what do you think is going to give the fans that little extra confidence? Because it's the same group doing it.
It's the same group, and that is very hard to stomach. It's the same group of scouts. It's the same group really in management, with the exception of Danny and Keith. We're seeing that they're saying that the tribunal, or whatever it is not going to be involved. But I don't believe that until I see it. I don't believe it until I see them start drafting for skill as opposed to size. I won't believe that until I see them drafting skill and speed as opposed to size and toughness. Like, that's what I want to see. And the Flyers just haven't really stepped outside that box much. They have a little bit. Cutter Gauthier is not super big, but like still, he was their size, their toughness pick. The other thing that should give fans some hope is it is going to be a high pick. It's a strong draft. It's a deep draft. There's only so many ways the Flyers can screw this up for themselves. Now, that being said, I think they might find a way, but I don't want us going into this draft thinking that they're going to screw it up. It's a very deep draft. They're going to get a good player at 7. Whether we see them this season or next season, that's the question mark. It might be a couple years before we see who they pick at 7, but
right.
Yeah. So to follow up though, because it could be 3 or 4 years depending on who you take. So, if Matvei Michkov falls to 7, the Flyers have only drafted 2 Russians in the last 11 years.
Yeah.
Provorov and Rubtsov. And I don't believe they would draft Michkov. I think they would pass on him. But what's your feeling?
That one's so tricky because of what happened with Fedotov. I think that they're going to be really extra wary, and I think that the whole NHL should, because who knows if they're going to be released from their KHL contracts or from Russia in general. But that being said, if we're not looking to bring him over for 3-4 years, the Russian situation is the kindest way that I can put that, might be over by then. So it might be worth taking a flyer on the kid if he falls, only because they don't know if he's going to be able to make it to North America to play this year, next year. If we're looking at 3-4 years, I think it'd be a great idea for them to pick him at 7.
I do too, but I don't have I just don't think they'll do it. And also with Dvorsky, so they haven't even drafted a European in a high number for a very long time either. And it makes me wonder if Dvorsky's there, they default to an American or Canadian without really giving him a chance, because he's a heck of a player too.
Yeah, that's a great question. And as you were saying that, it hadn't connected for me that all of their high draft picks have been from North America for the past lot of years. It didn't, that just didn't click for me until you said it. Ooh, yeah, I am so sorry.
That's all right.
We are all pet owners in Locked On Flyers.
Driver, and he is very upset at the little teacup Yorkie next door named Shitsy. I now that you said that and I'm thinking about it, yeah, I think they probably will skew North American or Canadian. Absolutely. That seems like the safe bet, and the Flyers like to play it safe.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, we'll have more with Steph coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Going back to the management hires a little bit before we started recording, we talked about the GM search and, that Danny Briere was the automatic choice when there are lots of options out there, especially with, some key people around the league getting fired or choosing to go elsewhere. And it seems like they didn't talk to anybody else. Like, that was very concerning. But what's your take on that?
Agreed completely. Really concerning that they made these hires fast before the season was really over. So we don't know who was available from other teams. And we've seen these names come up in the past few weeks, like Eric Tulsky, who got his start as a Flyers fan. Like, he's one of us, and yet they didn't request to speak with him. We've seen Kyle Dubas. Like, he may not want to come back immediately to run a team, but we could have spoken to him. That would have been great.
Yeah, we talked about that way before he got canned, that was going to be a possibility, perhaps.
Yeah, I fully believe that they should have, even if the result would have been the same, they should have done their due diligence, and they didn't. And that it wouldn't have changed the result for me. I think I still would have laughed, but at least they would have done their due diligence. At least we would have seen they are getting more hockey names that were not former Flyers in the mix. We're continuing with the theme of former Flyers, beloved former Flyers.
Okay, but hey, so answer John Tortorella then on the former Flyer thing, because he berated the fans over that.
I have absolutely no idea. I've got no answer for John Tortorella. I swing from really liking him to really not liking him. And it just depends on which public statements that he's made recently. I think that they believe he has a brighter future in the organization than just head coach. I think that he's going to move up. And I believe, and I've got no inside information here, but this is what I feel looking at it. I believe that he's been told that's the plan, because that's how he's acting. He's behaving as someone who's been told you've got a long future in this organization. And that's not bad. It's just, do you want your coach to alienate the fan base as he's continuing to move up the ranks in the organization? And I think the answer to that is no. You don't want the coach alienating the players or the fan base. And the players, that's definitely a concern with Tortorella.
Yeah, and committing to a guy for the long term in the middle of a rebuild is probably not the wisest move either.
Seems a little silly.
Yeah.
To be extremely kind. It seems a little silly, and to be less kind, extremely short-sighted.
Yeah, which actually does lead into the question, like, so if this were a year and a half ago when they probably should have started the rebuild, would they have hired John Tortorella at all?
They shouldn't have. No, he's not a rebuild coach. He is a coach that takes a well-packaged team and takes them further. He's a good coach.
He is
a good coach, and he will get as much out of this team as they're willing to put in. And we've seen them battle for him. That being said, he's got a shelf life. He's had a shelf life as a coach. And if they're only halfway through this rebuild, when that, it starts to expire and the locker room starts to turn on the coach, what's going to happen then? And that's what concerns me. When we have so many young players in the middle of a rebuild, are we really going to put them through another coaching change? And what comes to mind when saying that is Travis Konechny. He's had so many different coaches.
Yeah.
He's had so many different styles of play that's been expected of him throughout his career that it's amazing that he's still able to produce the way that he is. He's had a new coach every other season. I've been really impressed with him just being able to keep up the pace that he has because he's had a new coach so often. And saying that a lot of these players have, but ever since he came in, it's been and Provorov at the same time. So it's been a revolving door. They need someone to bring in some stability, but if they're halfway through a rebuild and they change coaches, I think that that's gonna throw a wrench in the works.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the Flyers are definitely on a bit of a PR kick right now, obviously with the new leadership team in place.
Yeah.
And, they've started this new messaging with a new era of orange. And now they're starting this liftoff theme as well for some behind the scenes coverage that they're doing this summer.
Wait, hold on. I missed the liftoff. Is this like a NASA thing? Like,
Yeah.
are they going to start because, anytime I get
Listen,
excited, I just want to say this.
I would
Anytime
love some rockets with
no,
the Flyers.
I
Put some
disagree.
Flyers in space on the Vomit Comet. I'm here for it.
I disagree. Every time I get excited about a NASA project, it just fails. It does. It either doesn't lift off. It takes 3 more weeks. It always seems to fail. And I don't care about every one of them, but every once in a while I do. That's the only reason I bring that up.
But have
Well,
they tried putting
space is hard.
yet?
Oh no, gritty in space. That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole different thing.
I'd be all for that.
Like, let's just put Gritty in a spacesuit and send him up. I think that would meet all of our expectations, I believe.
Yeah.
I think so too. But looking at all of this and what they're doing right now, does it feel like a change?
No.
Yet?
No. And it just doesn't, because they're not. They're trying so hard, this front office, but they know how disengaged the fans are. And it's just because the play has been abhorrent for the past few years. No one wants to watch this. Like, we have to watch these games. And even then, like, I half paying attention because it's awful. It's awful to watch these games. And then you watch the playoffs and you remember, oh, I really like hockey. Like, I love hockey. I just don't like the way that the Flyers have been playing for the past few years. The front office, like the PR staff, the marketing staff, they're trying so hard, but it's not going to come until the team is better on the ice.
So that
Although I like the new orange. I do like the new old.
Yeah, the new orange is good. I actually like that too.
Yeah, me
But
too.
that leads me into my other question about the disenfranchised fans that are already out there. Is this enough to bring them back, or what do you think it's going to take besides just showing that you're in the right direction, either in the rebuild or record-wise? You pick one. But I don't know, does this bring the disenfranchised ones back? I mean, I don't know if it does.
I don't think so. Really, I've been saying for probably the past year, maybe a little bit more, that the players need to start marketing themselves on the Flyers, like the Flyers players specifically, because that's the only way they're going to be more likable to the fans. Like, we need to get more behind the scenes of Owen Tippett. Like, let us get to know Owen Tippett, because that's the only way we're going to really become more engaged, is if the players become people as opposed to just these dudes that we watch from afar on the ice. And they're not. The NHL is terrible. Hockey players are terrible at marketing their stars. But the only way that fans are going to be re-engaged with this team, I think, is if the players start becoming personalities in themselves. So we want to watch them.
All right. So, I could help with that, because I have a picture of myself and I don't think I'm in this one, but I'm interviewing Owen Tippett on a boat before the NHL draft in Chicago, and he's in shorts. Like, he's just hanging in shorts.
Perfect.
Maybe I'll pull that video. If I have video of it, I'll have to look. I know I have it of a few of the players. I'll pull that back up, and at least, you can get an idea.
Yeah. Like, the Flyers have gotten
that.
to the point where if you go to a bar in Center City and there's a Flyer there, no one knows. Like, they're just not recognizable. So I think that the number one thing, getting them recognized in public, like even without the logo, make them become actual, like, professional athletes. And I think that that's lacking in hockey as a whole, but definitely with the Flyers. The last big personality we had was Giroux, and Giroux, for better or for worse, did not have much of a personality. The one that had the personality was Jake.
Not for that, like what you're looking for. No,
right. Jake Voracek was the one that had the personality that played with the fans, and it worked. Everyone knew who Jake Voracek was.
Yeah.
And people decided whether they wanted to root for him or against him. And it was pretty split within the fan base.
Yeah, because he got grumpy. That was the whole thing.
He did.
One of my thoughts for them on that front is I really think that the Flyers need to bring back the old school style of trial on the aisle and involve the current players in those competitions. Get the beach volleyball going, running up and down. Do sea rescue practice with the lifeguards, all of it. Bring it all back.
I have a quick story. So one year I got invited to play in that volleyball game. And it was unfair. Like, these guys are in such good shape. Stolarz was like a giant, right? So he didn't even have to jump to he could spike the ball from the middle of the volleyball court, and that was fine. But I went up against Nick Cousins, right? And I remember there was a play, I went up against him, and you know how sometimes you hit the net, and I hit against Cousins, and I moved away, and he was fine, and I was fine. And the guard there went up to Nick Cousins and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Dude, I'm like 50 years old here. You're worried about this guy?" And Nick Cousins started laughing. I'm like, "Don't worry about that guy. Seriously."
Right, he just ran into a brick wall of
right.
muscle. He's fine.
But it was fun. And I do think fans really did enjoy that. I know Lou used to enjoy that. I think it would be great. And it is fun. And, maybe Nick Delorier doesn't want to do it. I get it. But a lot of the other Flyers would want to do it.
Give me some Scott Lawton on the beach.
All for it. Like, Wade Allison would be just we've seen him do Trial of the Aisle. He is so much fun. That's a great idea. Old school Trial on the Aisle. I think that would be fantastic. More engagement with the fans, I think, is exactly what they need.
We'll have more with Steph coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. I look better and feel great wearing Birddogs shorts and pants. I'm wearing them now. They're stretchy fabric, makes me look great, and they're comfortable. And I wear them when I'm doing the lawn, when I'm walking the dog, just all day. I mean, I'm taping podcasts and writing all day, and I'm hanging out in them. And so far, so good. They're really good. They're some of the best shorts I've ever worn. So again, you could wear them when you're playing golf or hanging out with your friends. They're perfect to tailgate when you go into a baseball game, anything like that. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, and when you enter the promo code LockedOnNHL, they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order.
And so along those lines, in terms of fan engagement, in that presentation they did with Keith Jones and Danny Briere and the whole group, they talked about Ed Snider a lot and the legacy and all of that. And I just wonder, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it was a great thing because I think, Ed Snider's legacy is such an integral part of the Flyers experience and Flyers fandom. But there are a lot of younger people and younger fans who don't know Ed Snider and don't understand some of that stuff, which is neither good nor bad. It's a neutral thing. And to me, it feels like they haven't gotten a hang of how to present the Flyers and the Flyers future to a younger fan base that's just doesn't understand that history. And so how do you feel about what the Flyers are doing on that front?
I think you're spot on. I think that they launched Gritty to get the younger fans, and they don't quite know what to do with them right now. The Flyers fan base is pretty split down the middle. You've got the traditional Flyers fan who saw the cups, right? So you've got the Flyers fans that are season ticket holders. And then the next group that has the most season tickets below the we'll call them the boomers, if you will, but I hate using that. But it is the younger crowd. So they are seeing more youths, if you will. They are seeing them buy more season tickets. But you're totally right. They don't have that connection to Ed Snider. They have that connection to
Eric Lindros, maybe at the
Definitely
older.
Eric Ross. I was gonna say Claude Giroux, but like the whole 90s, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, that's where the connection is. The connection is with the players. The connection is not with Ed Snyder, the owner, because the only Ed Snyder, the owner they remember is when he brought in Briz.
Yeah, I do have an idea though for that. I do agree with the Briz thing. Like that was tough, but um, what about having like a Founders Day, like on one of those day games that they have an Ed Schneider Day, invite in some of his family, maybe even invite in some other dignitaries. Besides, you're going to have the triumvirate there, but maybe even like a Wayne Gretzky, someone like that. Let them speak. They're seeing Gretzky on TV, so certainly younger players, and and maybe then they might have a connection. They've never really done that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm wondering how do you think that would go over with the people who say that Ed Snyder is too involved in the legacy of today's team? Because I go either way.
I think this is just like
Yeah,
a, hey, we're paying our homage or homage to him, and maybe you don't know some of these
for
stories, so
one
we're gonna,
day,
yeah, so for one day, and we're gonna just, you might not know these stories, so we're gonna have some big people around the league give you an idea of what it was to deal with Ed, good stories and bad. I think people would enjoy it because I think,
Yeah.
the thing was when you interviewed Ed, like, it was like you got a lot of good and then you got a lot of like weird stuff too. And I enjoyed all of it. Like I did. And I think if people heard that, and then they might move off the Briz thing and say, okay, like I sort of get it now. I think it would help.
I think I think you're right because I became a Flyers fan a little bit late. I grew up in North Jersey, so I'm not really from Philly.
Yeah, neither am I. I'm from Long Island. So
Yeah, we probably grew up a half hour from each other. I'm very North Jersey. Um, so I came in late. I was just after the Lindros era where I came in. So I got the end of the Snyder era. So I don't remember the big highlights, but I do hear about them from my colleagues at Broad Street Hockey. Kelly
hmm
loves telling Ed Snyder stories. So
hmm
and it's very entertaining to see where the team has come from. And I do think there's huge value in that. Where I tend to I think what they did in the presentation was a little bit pandering to the fans, which I don't hate. I do love a good
right.
pander. I do love a good
Oh,
pander.
me too.
I
hmm
love it. But I don't think it's a bad idea to be like, this is where we come from and this is where
Yeah.
we want to go.
Yeah.
I think that could be a really fun bridge. Like we came from here. We're called the Flyers for this reason. It was an entry into a
And
contract.
and that way, maybe the younger fans would understand how those older fans feel, like, because they
Yeah,
probably don't get it, but after that day, they might get it.
yeah, yeah, and be a little bit more of a bridge
Yeah.
connection. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun too, and bridge that gap, like you
Yeah,
said.
yeah. Like this is we all got here some way.
hmm
So what is your fan origin story? And be like, this is
Yeah.
Flyers origin story.
Yeah.
That would be super cool.
Yeah, I think so too. Talking about, the on ice product and the team itself, do you have for this off season any like must keep
No,
players, or you like anything anything can happen?
anything can happen and I would support it. I always used to be, you do not trade Carter Hart. You don't trade the young talents like Joel Farabee, Owen Tippett. My mind just went completely blank. Cam York, like you don't trade the younger guys. But at this point, we're on a rebuild where you've got to listen to everything. If Carter Hart is going to get you the skill and the number one talent that we need, unfortunately, the one goalie that we've had that really could elevate us to the next level came at the wrong time. And that's really unfortunate. But if that's what it takes to get the rebuild really started and kicked off strong, that's what it takes.
Yeah, I think the hard thing is complicated, but I do think you're right. I do think you have to listen to everything. I think that sort of makes sense. But as far as the injured Flyers, Like, again, you hear like John will mention Couturier and Atkinson, like, hey, they're going to be back next year. They're going to be part of the penalty kill. I don't have that same feeling. Like, I have to see some actual play on the ice. Like Cam Atkinson, we haven't seen in a year. He was on the ice for 10 minutes, and then, all these things happened to him, felt horrible, and we have to see where he's at. Sean Couturier, when we saw him on the ice, he was just practicing and got hurt. So how do I think he could even get through 50 games this year? Like, how could I have that confidence? And that's a problem, because I think there is I think from inside, especially, there's a certain amount of, well, when we get these guys back, then we're going to be ahead of what we be in the rebuild. But I don't think you can count your chickens before they're hatched.
No, I think you're totally right. Because I used to be part of that crowd that was like, as soon as Couturier's back, they're going to be competitive. I don't know what version of Sean Couturier we're going to get back after all of these, the back injuries, the neck injuries. That's so scary. Like, as a human being, having back and neck injuries, that's so scary. And then to be a professional athlete and going out there and just wrecking your body, that's so scary. I don't know what version of Sean Couturier we're going to get back, but I'm pretty confident it won't be Selke winner Sean Couturier. And that's unfortunate. Atkinson, he's a good player. I think he'll come back and he'll continue to put up a bunch of points. But at this point in his career, we're a second line player at this point, and that's probably being a little bit generous. He hasn't played. We don't know. And then of course the other injury that just no one speaks of is Ryan Ellis.
Right.
Not really an injury, but also an injury, and no one quite knows what's going on.
But let me ask you about this, because again, so the Ryan Ellis thing goes way back. I was on that initial conference call when Ryan Ellis was on it. We brought it up on the show, but I haven't brought it up to you, so I want to hear your opinion. But on that initial conference call, somebody, and it may have been Sam or somebody else, asked him about previous injuries and having an injury history. And he really got, bristly about that. And he was like, no, I've only hurt my hand. I don't really have an injury history, yada, yada, yada. And here we are now. And so it's just like, what do you think about that?
It's so hard. I really feel for him. I've heard what he's dealing with behind the scenes, and it is, everything that I've heard is just horrific. Like what we heard about Pronger's rehab and how he was dealing with things, and it was really bad for him. His quality of life was really bad. I've heard that's the case with Ryan Ellis too. And I just can't. There's again the two pieces of me. There's the human part, and then there's the fan part. The fan part of me is like, what are we doing here? It didn't cost too much to get Ryan Ellis, Nolan Patrick, Phil Myers. They were not going to go places with this team, and as we've seen, really in the NHL, very far. So it didn't cost too much to get him. What it cost was the disappointment of having a really solid blue line. But when it comes to the people aspect, I just can't help but feel so bad for him. He got booed on opening night this year.
Yeah, he didn't deserve that.
No, he didn't.
That was awful.
That. The look on his face, you could tell he was like, I can't, like he can't control it.
Yeah.
I just felt so bad for him. And that's really where I land on Ryan Ellis. Like it's I can see how it would be embarrassing for the organization, but I don't think it should be. Injuries happen. It's just part of the game. I'm going on a little aside here. I've been watching 100 Foot Wave on HBO, and I just watched the season finale. And someone broke their foot, and they were just like, it's part of the game. It's part of surfing. Like this is normal injury. This is what happens. And that's hockey. Guys get injured. Sometimes they miss full seasons, and a lot of times it's career ending. We've seen it all over the place.
Yeah, I went to a Robbie Knievel jump. I covered it at the Intrepid in New York, right? And he, at the end, he made the jump, but he went into the hay bale so hard that his arm, like his hand was hanging, and it was broken. It was totally broken. Like we saw blood, and 10 minutes later, he came out of his trailer and he interviewed with all of us. And I'm thinking, this guy's got to be dying of pain. His hand is probably broken in 4 places, but he made the jump, so he's doing the interview. And I just felt like that's what it is like.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me, but that is the beautiful game that we love. Guys guys get hurt and they put their bodies on the line. And unfortunately, it cost us a really solid blue line for a season or two.
Yeah.
So, kind of to wrap things up here, Steph, just kind of looking at benchmarks for success for the Flyers, like what is your takeaway on like what a successful summer would be and then a successful next season would be?
Ooh, that is a great question. What I would like to see out of the draft is a really solid pick. I'd love if they could get another number one pick, another first round pick, not number one overall, but another first round pick would be great for them. Just really get a lot of picks from trades if we can. Free agency, I think it needs to be, we'll listen to offers on anyone. They need to be active. We cannot have another trade deadline JVR situation, which was humiliating. And for the season, what would make a successful season for me is for them to be fun to watch. That's how I measure success. Because I'm going to watch all 82 games anyway, I need to be having fun while I'm watching them. And for me, that will be a successful season if it's fun. I don't even need to know the win-loss record. If they're playing well and it's fun for me, that will be a successful season.
Is this fun with or without like alcohol?
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
All right, Steph, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. If you want to be found, where can people find you out there?
You can find me on Twitter at StephaLiciousD. I do have a project in the works that we'll be announcing in the fall, but I promise it's super exciting and you're going to want to be a part of it once you hear about it because I'm super excited.
Great.
But if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at StephaLiciousD. You can find my work on Broad Street Hockey.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
All right. Once again, thank you to Steph Driver from Broad Street Hockey Radio for joining us today. That was so much fun. We got into everything.
We did. We really dug in, man.
The players, the marketing, all of it.
Yep. We came up with ideas too. So if the Flyers are listening, hopefully you take us up on it.
I think so too. They should listen to us.
They should.
All right. Everyday listeners, tomorrow on the show, we're going to get back into our goalie week content. We're going to address a few more goalie prospects eligible for the upcoming draft. We're going to talk Noah Erliden. We're going to talk Trey Augustine and Michael Harabal. So some top goalie prospects available in the draft. And could the Flyers be picking one of them this year? As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So send in your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers, or you can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.